Goodbye, Alan.
Bye.
I miss you already.
I miss you.
Everything is terrible.
Not so sweet.
We finally got to record in person in real life, and I had to send you away. Please don't knock over my plant. The plant didn't do anything to you.
I know what's in the inconvenience.
It's only inconvenient because you walked into it. Hello and welcome back to the Fic List, everybody. Woo-hoo!
Oh my gosh.
Oh, my music, my little amp spikes on my recording thing just went really big. So maybe I need to chill out a little bit.
You're excited.
I am excited. Why wouldn't I be excited? We have a really fun and action-packed episode planned today. Alan, what, how are you? What's going on, bud?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I have God, it's been an interesting few weeks, but I will talk about it, I think, once we get into the weeds of the episode, because it all my life has basically been what we're about to talk about. So how have you been, Erin?
I've been great. I would say the same, except I played myself and didn't give myself adequate time to prepare for the thing that we are going to talk about. Listeners at home, this is an audio medium, so you can't tell. But there's a third person in the room with us today.
I guess you could have read the title of the episode, in which case you'll probably know before we've started speaking, really.
Truly. We have a guest on today's episode of the Fic List. Everybody,
Yes.
friends, woohoo! Everyone, welcome. Round of applause. Evelyn Rogers!
Hello.
Yes,
Yeah.
welcome.
Yay. Happy to be here.
Yay.
At long last.
Long-time friend.
Yeah.
Long-time friend of the podcast. Person that we've wanted to have guest for a very long time. One of our most ardent supporters ever. Friend who went through the magicians with me.
It's true.
Yeah. Also, incredible artist,
Aw.
stunningly talented human being.
Yes.
And
Oh my God.
All around good egg.
Oh, thank you.
This would be the part in a TV interview where they'd be like Evelyn Rogers, and then underneath a good egg is the subtitle.
I'll take that.
100%. So, Evelyn,
Yes.
dearest friend,
Yes.
wonder of our lives.
Yes.
What has brought us here today? As always, whenever we have a guest on the podcast, we say, you get to pick. And what have you chosen for us to read for today's here episode?
I have chosen for you guys to read Sansukh by Determamfed. It is the fic of my heart, the fic of my life. I've loved it for a very long time.
Incredible.
What's the author pronunciation one more time for me?
Determamfed.
Determamfed.
Det's for short.
Great.
Amazing.
Personal friend of mine.
Aw.
Love her to death.
Perfect.
I am the gender neutral aunt to her children.
Oh,
I
lovely.
love that.
Yeah.
That's so cute.
That's so sweet.
So, for the folks at home, this is indeed a Lord of the Rings fanfic.
Yep, it sure
And
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we kind of didn't do the tag thing for this. I mean, arguably the tag is long ass fic.
Long ass fic.
Yeah,
Canon character death.
right,
Major character death.
right.
Oof.
There are a lot of tags you could theoretically pull out of this one, but really you just wanted to talk about this fanfic.
Yes, I wanted to a very long time and it wasn't finished.
Mm.
And then it unexpectedly finished and I kicked down the doors of Aaron's DMs and I said, guess what we're doing when I come on the show?
Yeah. And you were like, and I quote, Alan's gonna kill me.
Oh, yeah.
And not wrong.
Little old
Not
me?
an inaccurate.
No.
Well, we saw the word count and I was like, oh no. So we've been planning this for a very long time, I would say.
A year and a half, I think.
Yeah, just about.
Since
It's been a long time.
June 2021.
Yeah, long enough that should I have started reading it sooner than I did?
Maybe.
Yes,
Maybe.
yes.
We don't
I may
think
have
about it
reminded
too
you
hard.
several times.
Yeah, including this week.
Yeah.
So many resources you provided.
Oh, yeah.
So many resources. Well, I think so that segues into an interesting I have two sort of main questions I wanted to talk to you, Evelyn, about in sort of the intro phase of this episode, which is one, obviously, what brings you to this fanfic? Why do you love it so much? But two, talk to me a little bit about the like surrounding lore of this fanfic because it very
There's
obviously
there's so
much.
Oh, I
And I
can't
feel
wait
like
to
of
hear it.
anybody, you are the person to talk to about it.
I was there for all of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Talk to me about what it was like and all of the stuff.
Well, first, what kind of brought me to it was I was very deep in The Hobbit when it came out. And so I was interacting with authors and such, and it had just started. I think it was only like 8 or 10 chapters in. And I started reading it, and I started talking with the author, and we became friends. And then I made it my life's goal to basically every time it updated, I would draw art. So I would be the first person drawing fan art of the chapter.
Nice.
And I did that for every chapter. But in terms of like the greater kind of Sansukh, what do I say, like not eventuality, experience, I guess. It's a very, it was very much like one of the like notorious long fics that I have found, like meeting friends from other fandoms. I have like mentioned it and they'll be like, oh my God, I've heard of that. As like, that is the quintessential Lord of the Rings Hobbit fic. And you know, there's many, many very good fics, but this is the one that I like love the most. And you know, there's a fandom for the fic, which I think is so cool.
Yeah.
It has its own TV tropes page. At one point, there was a podfic with a 36-person cast.
Is that why it petered out?
Yeah.
Too many
there
people.
was also a Sansukh orchestra. People have cosplayed characters, like original characters from the story. People have written recipes that are of food mentioned in the fic. People have gotten tattoos. People have written original music. There are countless fics that focus on original characters and characters within that universe. So there is a huge collective appendices, and there is also an appendices written by the author as well that has, there's a whole bunch of those. There are also, like, people would constantly do like live blogs of chapters when they would come out. So there's a huge tag on Tumblr. So if you go through, there's years and years of art. I've met many of my friends who I've had for like several years through that story. And it's just a really cool time. And I will say it is now known to members of The Hobbit.
Oh,
that is my fault. I paid
Evelyn, no.
I paid like 5 actors from the Hobbit cast to read sections of the fic. So I picked specific sections that were like their characters.
Oh my God.
So it's really cool.
Holy crap, that's amazing.
I'll send it to you guys afterwards. It's so
Please
awesome.
do.
And I've also paid professional musicians to play some of the original music that Detz wrote, because Detz is a professional musician and opera singer and just cool person in general. And so she wrote all this original music, and people have written their own tunes for songs in it and also written their own original music surrounding the fic.
Yeah.
And people have written alternate endings because it was on hiatus for 4 years before it finally finished. It was on hiatus from chapter 47. So she was like, we got 3 more chapters, guys.
Yeah, I saw.
And then it's just
Gone.
In the author's notes, there was this incredible moment where there was very clearly a jump, because it was like, well, that's been a hellish few years. Welcome back, friends. And I was like, what happened?
Yep.
And then I looked and I was like, oh, this is the chapter posted after the pandemic started. Got it.
Yeah. So
Got it.
Yeah. So we were all holding out hope for it. We actually during that kind of waiting period in 2019, a friend of mine made a Sansukh Discord, and I managed to like find all of my old mutuals, and we all were just hanging out and talking about how much we love the fic. And then that's how I found out that it updated for the first time in 4 years, because my friend was like, guys,
Oh my God.
it's here. And we were all having
You must have
freak out
screamed so
and stuff.
hard and so loud.
Oh, I literally scared an old man because I was at a park. And I screamed out loud, and the guy like looked up and he was concerned. I like drove home, and I was like, I need to go home. Drove home as fast as was legal and sat down and read straight for an hour, and then immediately drew art, posted it.
Amazing.
It's so important to me, and it's like I'll go into it later, but it's got this wonderful community of people, and it's just, you know, a wonderful story.
Wow,
I
yeah.
love when fanfics have their own like ecosystem.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Yeah. So obviously, on the far other end of the spectrum is me, who has never I've never seen Lord of the Rings.
Well, now you don't have to.
I know. Well, that's kind of what. So Alan and I went to the diner today, friends, because it was my motivation to finish this fic.
Bribe her with some pancakes.
If I finish reading this thing, yeah, I was like, if I finish reading this thing in time, we can go get pancakes. And then I didn't get pancakes, but it's fine. It was sort of funny. We were sitting there at the diner, and Alan rightfully maybe wants to jump in and point out this fun fact about it, which is that it's basically the same length as The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings combined. So
It's longer.
Yeah, my response was, well, then I don't have to read it. I've read it already. But it was sort of wild experiencing it as somebody who knows very, very little about the Lord of the Rings canon.
Mm-hmm.
And Alan, I think you fall somewhere in the middle, right?
Well, I had an interesting relationship, I think, to Lord of the Rings. I struggle a lot with fantasy just because I'm like, there's so many names and so many things are being referenced, and like, unless you know the lore, you're gonna get lost. And so 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna read the Lord of the Rings, and I'm gonna watch the extended cuts, and then I'm gonna be knowledgeable about this thing, and then I can decide whether or not it is for me or not. And so I read The Fellowship of the Ring, and then I watched The Fellowship of the Ring with some friends, and then I said, that was a lot of walking. No thanks. They do a lot of walking in The Fellowship of the Ring. Okay, it's a lot of lore, a lot of good songs, and I'm just like, it's just so much. I can't do it.
Yeah.
And so I never went back, and I never read or saw any of the other two. And I think as a kid I might have seen them, but I was a kid. Like, to me, I was excited about the swords and the bows, and I wasn't really paying attention to any of the like politics or anything of like note of what was happening in the story. So yeah, I did not have an appreciation for it. That being said, I did the work. I was like, listen, if I'm gonna read what is essentially the Lord of the Rings in fanfic form for this show, this episode, I need to be armed. And so over Christmas break, I had a long break because my organization shut down for the winter. I was like, we're going to sit down. We're going to watch The Lord of the Rings, not continuously because I couldn't do that to myself. And also I started them way late at night. I had an edible and I was like, let's see. We'll see what happens. And I don't know if it was the edible. I don't know if it's like I'm in a different season in my life, but I loved them. I watched them and I was like, oh, wow. And it was really interesting because, again, I had seen the Fellowship of the Ring like 5-ish years ago. Mm-hmm. And then I saw it this time and I was like, I remember none of that. What did I read? What did I watch before? What happened? So yeah, I sat through all of them and I was like, okay, I am armed now. And then I came to this fic and I was like, let's get into it. And then it starts pre-Lord of the Rings. It starts with The Hobbit, and I was like, fuck. I can't sit through 3 Hobbit movies. We're out of time. So I think my experience with The Hobbit is that I'd read half of it when I was in high school for a class assignment, and then in college we did a like TYA adaptation of it. So I was like familiar-ish enough that I was like, we're gonna get by. We're just gonna. When I first got to this fic after having seen the 3 Lord of the Rings, I was pissed. I was like, "Are you telling me I should have been watching The Hobbit? Are you telling me I should have watched The Hobbit before instead of the Lord of the Rings?" But then we got further, and I was like, "Okay, no.
Yeah, it's both. It's both.
A setup. It's a setup.
It's all of it.
We're getting there.
Yeah. That's hilarious. I think I'm gonna have to go and probably watch everything now. I feel like now I'm like, god damn it. Now I'm invested in these
Aaron,
gay little dwarves.
You know what we can do together.
Yeah. And I know that it's not like, so obviously there are elements of the story that are not canon, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think now I have a little bit more frame of reference for the world and all of that kind of thing, which helps. Because like Alan, I really struggle with like deep fantasy. When people have multiple names or when there's like deep lore to like learn and understand, that's just like my brain just like, I struggle with it, man. Like, so I didn't have like an easy go of this. It was not easy, and I didn't do any of the work.
You read it in 2 days.
I did. I quite literally. So today, dear friends, is Sunday, and would you like to know when I started reading this fic? Because it was Friday.
And you told me you were going to start it on Thursday.
I did, and then I thought I'm not going to do that, and then I didn't do it. Evelyn, welcome to Alan's world.
Yeah.
Where
At
I
least
say
it's-
I'm going to do things and then I don't.
At least you read it, you know? There are
yeah.
times you just send
Yeah.
me fics and you're like, I hope I remember that well enough.
True. Well, I can get away with it if I have read it before.
Yeah.
This was not one of those, and there is no spark notes. And what I sent a text to Alan, I think really late in the game yesterday was, and I quote, "I would give my left tit for a completed podfic of this." Because yike, I just really wanted to like not be staring at my iPad anymore after literally 13 hours of reading.
Well, Aaron, this is why I printed out copies of it.
I know.
Genius.
And then I thought to myself, damn it, I wish they were still doing that.
Hey, you
I
know,
would've bought one.
if you message me, I can hook you up.
Okay, good to know.
That is good to know. I had been dating someone like last summer who at the time he was telling me that he had ordered this fanfic that he wanted and 3 books of it, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then he was like, look, it's this, and it was Sansukh. And I was like,
Oh my gosh.
fascinating. You know? And
That's
he's
so
like, yeah, it's the
funny.
Lord of the Rings, and it was like 3 books, and I was like, wow, that's cool. Unfortunately, we were not dating anymore at the time of me needing to read this, so I could not borrow those.
Oh, well.
I was
Well.
thinking like, what a small world.
Yeah, I have them all here.
Yeah.
Oh
Just
my
to show.
god.
So you can see how much you read.
Beautiful. Oh my.
Incredible.
It's absolute. I can't wait to somehow log this in my Goodreads.
Wow, there is a Goodreads page for Sansukh.
Perfect.
So there you go.
So, all of that context laid down in terms of our silly little preface here, we decided, Alan and I, mostly me, to set down a devious little challenge for our friend Evelyn.
Oh boy. The obscure lore.
No, not that at all, because you would clobber us. I'm not even going to pretend that I'm capable of coming up with good trivia for this. The challenge, dear friend, light of our lives, we're trying to keep this podcast episode to like a reasonable duration because we're dumb. And in order to do that, we were like, well, we can't do a full summary then. Like, we have to figure out a way to get through this fic that is not going to be like blow by blow because we'll be here for 7 years, about as long as it took them to bring the ring to Mordor. And so our challenge to you, dear Evelyn, is to summarize the plot of this fic in 3 sentences, no colons. And then we can talk about the finer points that we want to talk about after that. What say you to that challenge, dear
I'm
friend?
thinking right now.
Great. Amazing. Should we play the Jeopardy theme song?
God. Well, I have
Do we
I
have
have
the
a
rights to
summary
the
that I
Jeopardy
usually
theme
tell people before I bombard them with the rest of the details.
Perfect.
Let's hear it.
Okay, maybe that's better. Do that.
It's a queer retelling of The Lord of the Rings that starts from the end of The Hobbit and finishes at the end of the appendices.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
I've had
Succinct
10
and-
fucking
wow.
years
Holy shit.
Challenge
to,
met.
They
to
were
work
ready
on
with
this
that.
premise. You can't catch me. I've been thinking about this for a year and a
Yeah.
half.
You know
Aaron.
what?
Damn. They're prepped.
I applaud you, Evelyn. How dare
Yeah,
I?
you really-
How dare I even try to catch you in this? That was incredible.
Amazing. Wow. Okay.
And you
Well,
know,
that was
that
quick.
is the fic I read. That's correct.
Yep. I do think we should probably read the summary that the author gave as well, just to
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
just to fold in our usual brand.
Yes. Amazing. Alan, do you want to read that? Should we? what do you
Sure.
wanna do? Okay.
Yeah. So this is the summary that the author wrote on Archive of Our Own. From a Hobbit kink prompt.
Yeah.
Also hysterical
Yes.
that this
Yes.
epic came from a prompt. Holy
I-
crap.
Love that so much.
Okay. The summary reads: The battle was over, and Thorin Oakenshield awoke, naked and shivering in the halls of his ancestors. The novelty of being dead fades quickly, and watching over his companions soon fills him with grief and guilt. Oddly, a faint flicker of hope arises in the form of his youngest kinsman, a dwarf of Durin's line with bright red hair. Parentheses follows the story of the War of the Ring. Parentheses, Baggenshield, comma, Gimli/Legolas, and close parentheses, in which recovery takes time, the dead members of the company take to watching Gimli as though he's a soap opera, the living struggle with being left behind, Legolas is confused, Khazd-dûl is abused, and Thorin is 4 feet and 10 inches of guilt and anger.
Yeah, baby.
That is also the fic we read, I think.
That is absolutely the fic we read.
Congratulations. Wow. And you know what? I'm going to say it. I think they fulfilled that prompt really well.
Oh, yeah.
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 Okay.
What do we
Yeah,
do
how
now?
where do we go from here now?
Well, we can't go blow by blow, but I
No.
did take notes because I
Okay.
knew that Aaron wouldn't.
Did
Wow.
you reread this for this?
I reread
episode?
it like months ago.
Uh-huh.
Incredible.
And then I was like, oh, I'll start rereading it again. So I'm on like chapter 19 right now, but I already know the whole thing. So I was like too busy to spend 13 hours straight reading it, which is usually not the case. I suddenly have a social life, so
Hey,
Love this for you.
thank
Congrats.
you.
I also did the work and took notes.
Mhm.
So-
Yay, note buddies. Yeah, mine stop at chapter 32 because I got really into the story and then was just reading straight and stopped. So
My notes are nonsensical. I wish you could see my screen. My first note has 1 and then a dash as in first chapter notes. And then I quickly realized not feasible.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
for 50 chapters. Can't do it. So then they're just bullet points of moments that I was like, that's good.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about
yeah, I've got some quotes that I hand wrote out,
wow.
that.
chapter by chapter.
Oh my God. You hand wrote all of that?
That's why I kind of stopped taking the notes too. It's like killing me.
Too
you
much.
are, wow.
Yeah.
And you know,
Congratulations.
Evelyn, you weren't wrong. Guess who didn't take notes?
Yeah.
That was me. Well, in my defense, I was white knuckling it through this whole thing, just praying that I would get this done in time for
Just a
pancakes.
roller coaster, man.
Yeah, and I was like,
Just
it was
time for pancakes.
it was real. Like I was like muscling my way through it, and it's no fault of the fic at all. Like I was just really dense because that's how it is, and I was just
Yeah.
like, dear Lord God Almighty, like I cannot do this and take notes, or I will be here until Kingdom Come.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I remember 2 things
Uh-huh.
that I want to talk about, and I
Okay.
hope I remember them when we go to rehash this, because
Perfect.
that's all I remember. One of which I sent to Alan in a text message at like 12 o'clock last night.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yep.
And
Yeah.
the other thing you texted me is, why are all these dwarves sound like my family members?
Yeah, 100%. Well, I was like, are they Scottish? Like, what's going on? And you rightfully pointed out that the language and a lot of the customs are based on like the Jewish people and like Hebrew. And I was like, oh. And then you were like, well, it's also kind of Scottish because of the movies. And I went, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I was like, there we go. Okay. Because I was like, there's several instances of Kenne, which is
Yep.
Cannae, and like a lot of like Scottish isms and also like very Scottish sensibilities. And then I was like,
Oh, yeah.
this is weird. This is hitting a little close to home. Anyway, we're off topic. Emily, do you want to get us rolling in some of the fun things you wanted to talk about with regards to this fic?
Sure. Well, like I'd say like the first 8 chapters is just like Thorin, wakes up from being dead. He's dead. Surprise. It's the
Well,
direct
spoiler,
end
man.
of Battle of the Five Armies. I'd say it kind of still is in the movie territory in these very first few chapters. I know that this fic was written before Battle of the Five Armies came out, so it talks about how he died. She changed it because it used to be like the book thing, and then it was like
Oh.
2 chapters later, the movie had come out and she'd watched it, and so she just changed those words. And so if you don't know, this fic is a melding of the book lore and the movie lore. So I think it's a very beautiful kind of. I love the context that it brings to some of the movie stuff and like the deeper meaning that it gives to the movie like lore that's been created with the book stuff like holding it up. But yeah, so Thorin is very depressed, very angry, sad little dwarf man.
He's a sad boy.
And
Retweet.
he's sad for 80 years.
Yep.
And he just like watches his afterworld TV of all his friends and family, growing old, and Bilbo's putting around doing something with tomatoes. And
As is his right and privilege.
during that time he realizes, oh shit, I was in love with Bilbo.
Yeah.
And oh shit, he was in love with me.
Yeah, basically. I love that the premise of this fic is Thorin is dead, can watch the living through this like space water puddle thing.
Gimlin's that on.
And yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to attempt any of the names of anything in this because I'm not stupid enough to try it.
The chamber of Sansukh and
That one.
and the pool of
Mhm.
Gimlin's Zaram of many stars. Yes, yes.
Correct, thank you.
Come on, Anne, keep up.
Yep, no. So he's like, I'm just gonna like watch over Bilbo and also Gimli and also everyone for all of time until I don't have to anymore. And that's how I'm gonna spend all day every day. And I'm gonna sit here and feel my feels about it. And
Yep.
I was like,
Just
this is
wallowing.
incredible. What a wonderful premise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he makes a vow that he'll, make his amends and take care of Bilbo, and that extends to when the ring is revealed and Frodo has to go on the quest to go destroy the Ring of Power.
So,
Yeah.
for my brain,
Yes.
what are the major diversions of the fic on the premise side of things? Like, what are the things that are canon divergent, just premise wise?
Actually, not super much. It actually follows canon. It's more kind of just adding to what's there. So the battle at Erebor does actually happen, but it's mentioned in the appendices of The Lord of the Rings. And Dane, like all these characters die when they actually die in the story.
Oh, okay.
Some of the stuff, again, because it's a mush of the books and the movies, that's kind of when you get canon divergent because it's following both and combining them. So, for instance, the elves come to help at Helm's Deep. That's something that happens in the movie, but not what happens in the book.
Oh, okay.
Or, for instance, Aragorn being more reluctant about being king is a thing from the movies, not necessarily from the books.
Got it.
But like Gimli's eloquence, some of the dialogue is pulled from the movie and pulled from the books. So you have songs from the books, you have songs that she wrote, and you have, like Gimli and Legolas saying, "You comfort me." That's from the books. And so like the Scouring of the Shire is from the books. The stuff at the end with going to Rune and stuff, that is not mentioned too much in the appendices, but it's still there. It says that they go and they help and stuff, but you don't really get to learn much about like the Orocarni and stuff. So it's really more of an expanding than it is like a divergence, which I think is really cool because at the time before The Hobbit came out, it was in terms of like the fan fiction for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, it was very like elf focused and no one really gave a shit about dwarves. And because of the Hobbit movies, people got really into developing dwarven culture because what they saw in the first film like looked really cool and they had all these distinct actors playing all these 13 dwarves, and so people started to develop off of it. And so some of the backgrounds for the members of the company are actually based off of stuff that actors have said in interviews. So like Oin dropping Gimli on his head as a baby is something that John Callan, the actor for Oin, came up with. Or like Bomber having 12 kids is something that Steven came up with. Or like Biffer being a toy maker is something that he came up with. And so you have all of these like background things that are just being fleshed out.
Got it. So Gimli and Legolas boning is fanfic.
Okay, that's just
It's
like
canon.
a what if.
Great.
Like I don't think we don't know.
Sounds like that happened.
The Lord of the Rings is supposed to be a lost manuscript.
Okay.
So translation
Got it.
errors.
Great. I was like, I assume that these more overt relationships are, extrapolations on what we wish may have happened.
Yeah.
Very fun. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's next?
Well, they go into the Council of Elrond and decide to have the quest, the big old quest. I will say one of my favorite chapters, like before like the quest kind of sets up, is chapter 8 because it's when all the dwarves are in Moria and they're just like getting horrifically murdered.
Oh yeah.
It freaks me out every time, and Oin's death is just so horrific.
Oh.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
My favorite like note of that is when he goes to like hug his parents and he makes the same noise that he made when he was getting choked to death.
Yeah.
And Thorin has to leave.
Oh, it's
I can't
awful.
believe you prefaced the start of that opinion with one of my favorite chapters. I
It is.
literally wrote
can't
on my
help
notes, I'm like, the attack on Moria was heartless.
It was
Parentheses
awful.
devastating. I cannot tell you the amount of tears that I have cried throughout the course of this fanfic. I think must have been like 3 gallons worth or something, because
I'm shaking your hand digitally.
that chapter, the Moria chapter, I was like ugly crying, like sobbing, like, oh god, because that's one of those things that in the movie, in the Lord of the Rings, in the book, that you don't see happen. Like the Fellowship arrives at Moria and finds out what happened to the expedition, and it's horrifying, and you're like, oh god, and then they read the book, Ori's book.
Yeah, Ori's book.
Nice, good job, Alan. So you get to read like the account of what happened to the expedition through Ori's eyes, and you're like, that's horrifying. for the author to have like been like, I'm going to show you what happened. Oh my God. And then all of the dwarves coming into the halls after it freshly. I was a mess. I was not okay. I was like, no one look at me.
It hurts so
Awful.
bad. Brave Ori.
Yeah,
Oh my
writing till the
God.
end and being like, we will be remembered through the words that I am writing down. Oh,
The thing that always
yike.
gets me is afterwards when it's that scene with Dory making his tapestry and Nori and Ori are watching him and they're like, he's all
Oh.
alone now. He doesn't have anyone to take care of.
Yeah. I think it's worth pointing out like the mechanism of death in this fic and like how critical it is to understanding like the entirety of the story, because basically, and I'm sure this comes from lore, like the canon lore is like for dwarves, when they die, they go to the halls of Mahal.
Mahal.
Yeah. And Mahal. And they are basically reunited with all of the dwarves who have gone before them to wait for the second iteration of life, like basically some kind of like new age, whatever.
Yeah.
So they all kind of live in this perpetual state of waiting, and you can access the living world but not interact with it through this puddle thing that Evelyn pronounced so nicely before. But in like
Gimli Saram.
Yeah, when Thorin dies, he is given the gift that people can hear him, or they can kind of hear his voice, especially
through his subconscious.
Yeah, through the subconscious, especially Gimli. He is the only one who can really have any influence on the living world. And the whole structure of like the afterlife to me was fascinating, devastating, hopeful. Like it's such a complex and interesting take on like what happens to you after death, and the different like types of beings are separated after death. So like the dwarves are in their own separate thing because of who made them. So like each race of being has a different maker, and they are, you know, in part of that realm, and that comes back later. Spoiler. So, but like that whole mechanism to me, just as like as something to like reckon with, was because most of us have experienced some kind of loss in our lives, and just thinking about having like everyone who's gone before you around you at any given time and like walking with you. I had a lot of feelings about it.
Yeah.
Can I also say, I think that I agree with everything you're saying. And I think also, like, can we talk about how effective a device it is for fan fiction, for fiction, and at any like capacity? Because think like Thorin and all of these dwarves, like oftentimes in the fic, talk about how powerless they feel, like they're watching things unfold and they're not able to interact, they're not able to give their 2 cents or their advice or anything. You just watch, and there's like a kind of helplessness too when bad things happen, when they're like, I want to be here for it, like it deserves to be like experienced. And that is so effective. That's such an effective tool in a fanfic, in anything where you as a reader can't interact with what you're watching, what you're experiencing. Like the way that it so immediately sets you up to sympathize with Thorin and the dwarves, because you are with them, like you are standing next to them watching the bad things happen, and you as a reader cannot affect the outcome of it. It was so smart, like the way it interplays with fiction and fanfic, and it was so smart. I loved it.
Yeah. And it makes you feel conflicted too, because you see a character die and you're so upset, but then you're like, well, but then they're gonna be in the halls and they're gonna see everyone else, you know. But you're like still like in later chapters there is Dane's death scene, which is my like one of the chapters that I always come back to because it hurts me so much.
Evelyn, we need to talk, bud. What's happening? You're dropping all of the chapters that I was like scarring.
Listen, we're gonna go in and come back and go in and come back. But like you're sitting there and you're like sobbing, and then you're like, oh, there he is.
Yeah,
there he is.
Everything's fine. He's with his family.
Everything's
all
fine.
good.
He's dead. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, don't think about all the sad people who are mourning his loss.
Right.
And same thing with Thorin and Balin. You have those moments in earlier chapters where Thorin is like watching his own funeral and Balin is watching Gimli mourn him because they go through Moria, and Gimli finds Oin's staff and he's just
Yeah.
crying, sobbing, throwing up, and it's so sad.
It's awful.
So many tears. But one of the additional tags in this is things are going to get worse before they get better. And boy, is that right. Boy, is that accurate.
Yeah.
They do indeed.
Nail on the
Yeah,
head.
it's a rough one.
Yeah.
But, the fellowship begins. They go on their little quest. They get into Moria, as we said, and, bad things happen.
Yeah.
And it sucks. But we get to have some bonding moments in Lothlorien.
Oh, love Lothlorien.
That's like my first kind of like squeal moment that I always have. I was just telling Aaron this before we started recording because I am, just doing my casual reread for this. So I wasn't rushing myself.
Congratulations.
And I'm at the part where, Legolas and Gimli are bonding for the first time and becoming friends. Legolas walks in on Gimli mourning his friends and family. And it is the first time they bridge that gap. And it's just so touching every time. They're buddies. And then it's like, Thorin is just sitting in the background with his head in his hands doing like the Shinji on a chair pose. And it is the best thing ever.
Yeah. I also, not to be the person who always goes back to like big picture thing, but I'll do it. The other thing that I thought was really fascinating about this fanfic was how it dissects and talks about the dwarves as an oppressed people and how it parallels, Jewish culture and anti-Semitism and all of these, like how people develop cultural rituals and protect cultural rituals in the face of discrimination and the ways in which they like sort of bridge those gaps between the dwarves and the elves over the course of the story was fascinating to me because there's so much distrust and so like rightful distrust from the dwarves about everything else, but they're also so kind and so willing to like they're kind of the first to reach out their hands. Like if anybody is willing to give them even like a scrap of like respect, like they're good. They're like, we are willing to, if not fully accept this, then at least move forward in hopeful like friendship or like an attempt at friendship. And that's what I think makes the dwarves in particular so like you're rooting for them so hard because they're obviously treated so poorly. And so you root for them the whole time where you're like, oh man, like these are deeply loving, complex people who are being treated as like lowborn simpletons who can't possibly, and you're like, no, they're great, we love them. And so like you get this sort of like righteous anger in their behalf, which is also super motivating as a reader because you just root for them the whole time and you just fall in love with them. And so when Legolas gets his head out of his ass and starts to recognize that like he was being a dick, like that's when you start to root for him too. Yeah. And that I think is sort of, I'm sure that partially comes from canon, but I thought that was such an effective interpretation and understanding of navigating that kind of intergenerational oppressive system.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. I think that there was some like, and I think that's mentioned like at the end of the appendices, the care that the author took to make sure that they like everything was grounded in the culture and the language. And I agree. I think that was well said, Aaron. And because it is a thing where like you think Lord of the Rings, you think fantasy, and almost immediately your mind goes to elves. Like it's just like they've always been the like they pushed forward, like they hold the mainstream's consciousness, I think, in a stronger way where you think fantasy and immediately think elves, and then maybe you'd think dwarves and everything else. So I love that this fic was like, well, how about we say fuck that and have essentially the Lord of the Rings as told through the eyes of dwarves. Yeah. And it was wonderful.
And so I think some of that comes from the fact that in terms of like Tolkien adaptations, you don't really get a dignified look at dwarves until the Hobbit trilogy, because in the Lord of the Rings, they kind of sideline Gimli to become comic relief, when in the books, he's actually like the most poetic character. He's very loyal and trustworthy and like beautifully spoken, and this dwarf lord. And then, in the movies, he's like passing out and, he's like, don't toss me, and so you don't really get any kind of like interesting look into that facet of that world until they started developing stuff for the Hobbit trilogy.
So much like when you're going through the journey of the fic, you just have to like learn.
Yeah.
You learn all the complexities of it through the course of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved it. I thought that was a really salient part of this fic and an important part of it, and something that it was, if not consciously, then at the very least subconsciously trying to pinpoint as not like a moral or like a lesson. I think that's kind of trite way to put it, but just something to take away from it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So we've talked about the sad times.
The sad
In
times.
chapter 8 and the sad times with Dane. What other sad times did you enjoy, Evelyn?
Me? Oh.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just trying to get us to our next
number
plot
one
point.
sad times. Well, I mean, there's the breaking of the fellowship and Boromir's death.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
so
my
sad.
God.
And you have Thorin,
Yes.
Thorin and Freyrin watching it happen, and Thorin is projecting so hard on Boromir, and he's so upset about it. And then they're like, "Fuck our schedule, which we just made, has been completely destroyed."
Wait a minute. We have to talk about the schedule character. I love. Okay, so one of the things that happens is Thorin spends way too much time on watch duty and like basically drives himself.
He passes out.
Yeah, he like if he weren't
In the
already dead, he'd be
waters.
driving himself into the grave, but he's just like really messed up about it. And there's a moment where he sees Gimli through the mirror at Lothlorien. Is that right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the first time that he and Gimli can like speak to each other, but the struggle of that, like the weight of doing it knocks Thorin out because he's so tired from having like never taken a break from watching over Gimli that it's just like a hot mess.
Mhm.
And so from that point on, one, Gimli can more clearly hear him and like can hear him as Thorin and not just his own
Yeah.
subconscious. And then all of the other dwarves come to Thorin and like, you have to remove your head from your sphincter and let us help you. And like, stop it.
He gets a dwarven intervention.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved that. I thought they were like, let us help you. You literally have all of the people in your family line and like friendships, like every single dwarf here wants to help you, and you're being a hard ass son of a bitch. Like, stop it. And so they set up like a watch schedule. They have like all of the information has to get routed through the queen, and like they use Nori to like spy on stuff, and like it was just so thoughtfully done, and it was so interesting how they like worked together to achieve their goals after that point. And I was like, this is baller, this is great, I love a project manager, this is great.
Yeah.
I was
I'd also
very
say that
into
I
it.
think that was really smart because it then one of the things that I can't remember who was leading that intervention. I think it was his grandfather. Thror, right?
Yeah.
So his grandfather, he was like, oh, because, you have to mine the excellence in the room or something like that. And like basically says, like, think about the resources and all of the things that everyone accomplished in their life and put that to use. And then from then on, you start to like know more of the dwarves because you're like, oh, this is, Ori's the one that does the schedule.
Yep.
So it's Ori's schedule. And Nori is the sneaky one. So he goes off and does the sneaky thing. Freyrin is the fastest. So you start to like give them characteristics that helps you as a reader keep them straight a bit more.
Yeah.
Which was really
And
smart.
then because they're assigned to like different people and areas, you kind of have a touchstone with whatever dwarf is watching whatever sequence of events. So then it becomes easier to keep track of what's happening in all the different plot lines that are happening concurrently throughout the story, of which there are many.
Yes.
It's true.
Yeah.
That's a great
Yeah.
point.
There were a lot of plot points. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'm not sure I know all of them or remember all of them.
That's fine. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, there was one with someone with a long name that was like Celebor or something like that. And I was like, I got nothing. I have no context for who this is.
Celebrimbor, you mean?
Yeah,
Celebrimbor.
that one. I was
Celebrimbor
like-
and Tauriel.
I was like, you could
The
be
elves.
anyone
The
and
elves and
anything,
Amon.
and it's all good.
Yeah, I got you,
No
girl.
clue.
Yeah.
Until the very end, I was like, who dat? Don't know.
Oh, that's why you
Yeah.
touchstone with all the fan art that's there to keep track.
Oh, yeah.
Which was
yeah,
so
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
By the way, let's mention first of all, Evelyn, congratulations. I love coming across. I loved also being able to recognize your art style. Like I would because I'd read, and then I see like a peek of it, and I'm like, I think that's Evelyn, and then it would be, and I'd be like, ha,
Yeah.
amazing.
Same.
First of all, congratulations, beautiful,
you.
beautiful work all around. But I do want to say, like, I also that's another thing I deeply appreciated about the fic and the author. Like, she went back in and like added fanfic as it came out, and like she would put it in the pertinent places. So it'd be like you're reading about this scene, and then here's some fan art of that scene, and you're like, oh, that's lovely. It was just a lovely little breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Or like all of the music that was composed, like sometimes it was hers and sometimes someone else had like an arrangement, and so she would put them there, and you get your pick, so you press play and you read through as it's happening, which let me tell
Did-
you, oh
yeah,
my god,
did you
another part
listen?
that I like sobbed.
I told Aaron that's the number one thing.
I listened. I did it.
I'm so proud of you.
I didn't listen to all of them. I think like the traveling ones, I was like here and there, I'd be like, yeah, I have the time. Other times I'd be like, I'm just reading, or I'm like, I just want to keep going, because I'm also the type of person that I can't, like, I don't process lyrics very well. Like I have an auditory delay, so I have to like sit there and read each line of lyric, and I'm like, that's great, but I have another 35 chapters to knock out in the next week and a half, so we're moving. But I did listen to a few like at points where I was like, this needs to be heard like with this arrangement. So like I think
Iron Hills,
the song that happens, the Iron Hill song after Danes.
It hurts.
Pain of the most beautiful. Oh my god, absolutely gorgeous. And then the one that
their wedding song,
the wedding song,
Yeah, obviously.
the one that Gimli writes for Legolas was. I read that. Like that was the last chapter I read before calling it a night or something, sobbing. Just like I went to bed crying still, in like the best way possible, to be very clear. But it was just beautiful, and the arrangement and like the moment, it was like a perfect, like just everything hit, and I was like, this is what fanfic should be. I was like, it's so like all encompassing, because it's like you have these characters and this lore and the canon that you know in new situations. These at that point you'd already, like, I think that was post destroying the ring too, so you at that point had already gone through the journey with them. You knew everyone at that wedding, and like it was just beautifully written, and like there was acceptance and there was love and there was like sorrow but happiness, and like the lyrics perfectly encapsulated that, and like it was gorgeous. I was like, this is perfection. This is a perfect moment.
It's just
I loved it.
good.
Congratulations to the author. I think that was her arrangement that is on the fic.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, her original.
Congratulations.
Lyrics and arrangement. Yeah, and if you want, I can send you the
God.
instrumental version that I made.
Yes, please.
I might. I mean, geez, it was. Let me just read you some of these lyrics. I think these might have been the last few.
Yeah.
There's a light on the horizon. There's a ship upon the sea. Now the world is so much wider, for you wander it with me. And the sun shines out the clearer, golden glory in the blue. There's a light on the horizon, and it's guiding me to you. Done. Donezo.
Yeah.
Bawling on the ground, screaming, crying, gonna shower with a toaster. It's,
Jesus.
you know.
Alan, don't do that.
No, Alan, don't. Yeah, it's so good. All the music is wonderful.
Well, it really sets you in place too in a big way, because I mean, obviously like music does so many things narratively. It grounds you very deeply in like a culture, a place, like a time. And so having that, a lot of the times what I would do is let the music play and just kind of keep reading. I would like read through the lyrics, but I don't have the thing where I can kind of just like go through it. So often, like, especially the longer pieces would stick around for a little while. And it was just so nice to like have some grounding in the situation, like with
in the world.
music. Yeah, it was really cool. It was very world building.
Yeah, and in Lord of the Rings, there's a lot of singing, and it's like every character has like a song, or most of them does, like even the bad guys. So, you know, it's just the whole world of Middle Earth was created through song, and so everyone is always, you know, singing, and it's so wonderful.
Can relate.
Yeah.
Constant singing.
I was gonna say, should I live in Middle Earth?
I don't know. This seems really intense. There was a lot of running.
Yeah, a lot of running.
Oh my god.
I don't do running.
So much running. I felt bad for them. I was like, yo, why don't you like stop running, leave the pool, and then come back in?
Yeah,
just,
but it's like moral support,
back in.
you know?
Plug back in.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I was like, I got the option to opt out of cardio. Yeah, I'm good.
Oh my god, they were like, I can't, like, I good for them.
But they be jogging. They jog.
They be jogging.
They do be
That's
jogging.
gonna be the title of this episode.
Yeah.
And they jog all the way to Rohan. It's the three hunters.
Yeah.
And that's when we really get like the bonding moment.
Oh, because they're following. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love when they're, you know, Helm's Deep is a wonderful. It's so tense. The action is like you're right there, and then you get that wonderful moment. Well, wonderful in that it's stressful. You know, when Legolas is like, "Hear me, Thorin Oakenshield, if you be near." go and find Gimli for the love that we both bear him. And it's like the first time that Legolas talks about how he actually has feelings for Gimli. And then when they celebrate afterwards, he's talking in Elvish while he's drunk about how he's so sad that they can't be together. And it's just...
Yep. I think we need to talk about gay disasters, Gimli and Legolas.
There's so many gay disasters in this story.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Great. Let me say, I took a note of this and I have the quote. This is Legolas confessing to a drunk Pippin.
Mm-hmm.
So this is him. I can't remember where in this falls. Is this post Helm's Deep?
Probably, yeah, if they're partying.
Is the drunken night at Rohan happens post Helm's Deep? Yeah, like that celebration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he's I guess it's too long to read actually, but he talks about how he's afraid of time, of how he finally is starting to learn that he's afraid of mortality, and he talks about how not having the words, like how do I don't have the words in Dwarvish to tell him what he means to me, because in Elvish, we let silence tell us what we would need to know, and he goes off on this beautiful tangent and Pippin just looks at him with unfocused eyes and says, "You need another drink," and walks off. And I was like, you're killing me. In that same night, fellow friends, I wrote this and I texted my best friend and I was like, this is going to mean nothing to you, but Legolas went from calling Gimli Melanin to Melathnine, like
yeah,
that he's
it's
drunk.
so great.
And
it's so great.
Screamed. I screamed. I was like, "Are you joking?" So like he just went from calling Gimli my friend to my love.
My love. Yeah. He thinks he's so sneaky about it.
He not sneaky.
No.
Meanwhile, Aragorn is like, Jesus,
man.
would the two of you stop it? Like,
my favorite thing is all of the dwarves slowly noticing
Yeah.
that they're in love, and everyone going, "I'm not telling Thorin about this. Someone else can deal with this."
Yeah. My favorite, I think the earliest one is Threra. Is it Threra who does it? Like, it was somebody.
Herrera.
Yeah. It's like one of the older women.
Yeah.
And is like,
yeah,
I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole. She's like, no one is ready for this. And like clocks it early and is like, and like literally walks away. And all the boys are like, huh?
What did that
She's
mean?
like, don't worry about it. You'll find out what you need to find out.
Yeah.
When the time is right.
Yeah. And then when Thorin
it's
does
just like
find out,
the vine boom noise.
Yeah, like when he does find out, he just goes nuclear, and it's so funny.
Oh, destroys his forge.
Yeah,
I love the description of him throwing like an axe through the wall,
Yeah.
and it like gets stuck.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it's like it's not even. It is that it's Legolas is an elf, but it's specifically that Legolas is Legolas. That's the problem. Like he was like, I might be able to get over the elf thing, maybe, possibly, but this one.
Yeah.
It's really, it took a lot of time for Thorin to like,
but then he turned around and he's their number one Gigalos supporter.
He ships them.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's so great.
In that note, here's another lovely little moment where Thorin knows that Legolas loves Gimli, but has made his peace with it.
Yeah.
And then it hints to Gimli like, maybe this is what's happening. And Gimli's like, nah. And then walks away because he's afraid of like, once so a plot point which happens in the fic is that Gimli talks to Aragorn after the drunken night at Rohan, where he says, well, Legolas was talking about like wanting something but not being able to have it, or being afraid of not being able to have it, like what could it be? And Aragorn's like, well, I don't know. And Gimli says, oh, sorry, you have your elf deal, right? So that was insensitive of me to ask.
Your elf situation. You have your elf on the shelf.
Well, then Aragorn's like, well, Arwen is giving up her mortality, and like elves can die of a broken heart. And Gimli says, say no more. Then it's not happening. He's like, if Legolas doesn't love me, then he can't die of love, which is dumb because at that point Legolas is already in love with him. But we digress.
Yes.
And so Thorin is like trying to tell Gimli, like, say something, you idiot. And they get to the paths of death. They're following Aragorn to go get this ghost army. And I don't know if it's explained, but I think it's because maybe the veil is so thin there.
Yeah, because they can see the ghost army as well.
Got it.
Yeah, so they can it's much thinner there, so they can see all the dwarves that are following him.
Amazing. But that also means that Thorin now can speak directly to Legolas.
Oh yeah.
And Gimli's like, don't you dare. Shut the fuck up.
and Legolas is like, oh no.
Well, Thorin, because Legolas doesn't know about Gimli's feelings or Gimli's affection, and Thorin pulls out the card where he's like, Legolas Dandelion, you at one point said that I have to that you would do anything in service of me finding Gimli. I'm here to pay up, basically. I want you to speak your heart. And I was screaming and then wrote this note, literally. I said, I love that Thorin is representative of every fanfic reader who reads Idiots to Lovers. He's done it. He meddled and now watches the aftermath. Hail Thorin Oakenshield, King under the mountain. I was like, I slow clapped in my living room. I was like, yes, it's what we've always wanted to do in a fanfic, which is just like, talk assholes.
Yeah, it's so satisfying. And then once they, acknowledge their feelings and stuff, he's like, I regret this a little.
Congratulations, I played myself. Yeah.
But we need to talk about the other Idiots to Lovers, which is, of course, Bilbo and Thorin.
Yes, we do. We do also need to talk about
iconic babes, so sad, so tragic. Bilbo growing more and more insular as time goes on and more secretive, never wanting to talk about his love. And Thorin watching over him every day. And then he starts seeing him and he thinks Bilbo's a manifestation of his guilt until he goes to visit Bilbo. And it's the iconic scene, one of my favorite lines, because out of context, it is the dumbest shit you've ever heard. But in context, it is like the most heart-wrenching. And it's just Bilbo realizing, he's like, what? You've been stalking me for 80 years? What the fuck? And he wakes up, and then Thorin falls to his knees and goes, but I made you a pen.
Yup.
It is. I forgot that
You
line.
have fan art of that, right?
I have drawn that scene 5 times.
It's funny.
It is so
I seem to remember yours ending that chapter or something. I was like, I remember that.
Yeah, there's 10 years of my art embedded in that fic.
Oh, there so is.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love the literal photos of your art that are clearly from a sketchbook.
Yeah.
Just iPhone
when I was
photos of
11 or 12.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
Your talent is unreal. Anyway, yeah. So I love Thorin and Bilbo because they're real dumb. Dumb. But Bilbo, I was talking about this with Alan. I was like, Bilbo is me. Bilbo is a level of crotchety that I just aspire to. And there's one moment, this is what I sent to Alan at 12 in the morning, where Bilbo just says, another battle. Really? And that's what I said. I was like, I agree, Bilbo. I think there are too many of these. And so
you can blame Tolkien for that.
If I remember correctly, you texted me first and were like, there's too many battles. And I was like, all right, fair enough. There would be if you binge it in 13 hours.
Yeah, I did it to myself,
and then
to be fair.
Shortly after that, you sent me that picture of Bilbo and I was like, that's hysterical.
Yeah. So I said, literally, if I have to read through one more battle, I am going to be the one swinging axes.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is the photo of another battle, truly, with just Bilbo gets me.
Amazing.
And then Alan responded, I have bad news.
Yeah, it's the War of the Ring. There's a couple battles in there.
Yeah, there's many of them.
There's a few.
But anyway, the two of
well-known
them
ones.
are so funny. And Thorin having to navigate all of his guilt and literally everyone around him being like, it's real, you did some stuff, but you're not the worst.
Yeah.
You need to chill out a little bit and accept the fact that you did the best with what you could with a shit hand. And the madness wasn't really your fault either, which I think we can also talk about as a corollary for some mental illness stuff. It was really fascinating.
I had that note.
Yeah.
Yes.
For him to navigate his gold madness, he was he no longer experiences it. Although there are a couple of times where gold comes out, specifically the ring comes out and it speaks to him in weird ways or whatever, where he has this guilt around what he did while he was mad. And everybody's like, did the madness that afflicted your father and your grandfather, did that negate all of the good things that they did? And he's like, no, absolutely not. It's did that make them weak? And he's like, no, of course not. And they're like, yes, so turn that around on you. And he's like, no, I am garbage. And it's such a deep metaphor for mental health. No, sorry. It was so poignant, I thought.
Yeah, I was going to say, and there's I love also, he goes through his whole healing process and then is there to kind of help the newly dead to kind of deal with their own guilt about whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who he said this to. Evelyn, you might be able to tell me, but this is a quote that I thought was really poignant. Thorin was quiet for a moment, and then he said, I will not be surprised if you cannot believe me, but I speak truth when I say that my guilt has poisoned me. I have been locked in shame and self-hatred. I have torn at my every good part in my haste to condemn my faults. I have allowed myself no peace, no healing, no understanding. I have driven myself to the edges of my endurance and punished myself in ways that I would call cruel if they were visited upon those I care for. If I have been unkind to others, I have been monstrous to myself. I was like,
I think I know what conversation that is.
I don't remember to whom he said it. I think maybe
it's when he's
Balin?
talking to Freyrin. Yeah.
That makes sense. But I thought that that's one of those things that like I struggle with like day to day, where I'm like, I am so easy, like it's so easy to hear all of the like my voice in my head like disparage me and be like, oh, you're not good at this, you're bad at that, like look at how like worthless you are at this and blah 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 blah. But it's that, you know, that trick where you're like, if you wouldn't think that about someone else or about someone you love, then you shouldn't be thinking it about yourself. And I thought that was a really beautiful way to put that.
Yeah, it's a really like wonderful healing journey that he goes on. And you see that happen for like the rest of his family members as well. You see like Freyrin deal with his PTSD and kind of learn his own limits as well. Like he feels less obligated to witness like horrific battles as time goes on. And with Thror and Thrain, the guilt that they feel as well for going through the kind of horrific tragedies that they experience through life. Like it's really this like wonderful kind of collective healing process that happens with like all of the dwarves. You get like Nori as well, Balin, and they kind of, their guilt eases as time goes on, and they all kind of settle. And because he settles, he feels more comfortable finally, living in the halls and waiting. And instead of feeling that like guilt and anger like prickling inside his breast, keeping him like active all the time, he can actually find time to rest. So by the time at the end of the story, he's actually like letting his beard grow for the first time in years upon years, because he first shore it because of his grief at the siege of Erebor, the sacking of Erebor by Smaug. And so he finally feels comfortable enough to let go of that and make it a thing of the past that happened. And it's just like a wonderful story about like healing. And, I just keep saying it's so good because it is.
Well, and if he had never gone on that healing journey, I don't think we would have gotten to the point in the story narratively where he could go and argue for Bilbo to be able to come be with the dwarves in the afterlife. Like he had to believe himself worthy of making that ask. So as we discussed earlier, part of the construct is that like the dwarves live separately from the other races in the afterlife.
Yeah.
And they basically make Mahal like basically allows him to go and ask the larger, I don't know, like council or whatever of like
he gets snuck in by Mahal and Nienna, I think it is, and he goes and he yells at Manwë, who is Manwë is basically like the mouth of Eru, who is like the big guy who made everything, and they all work in tangent, but he's like the big one,
Yeah. And
so he goes and he yells at another god.
Incredible. To allow Bilbo to live with them in the afterlife. And like that had been sort of set up by, I think it's Keeley, goes to Mahal all the time. Was it Keeley?
Yeah, Keeley.
Goes to Mahal throughout the story, like from the beginning, and is trying to like petition Mahal to like let this happen. And he's basically like, I'll wear him down. And there's like, and he does. There's a slight sort of, he was like, it's slightly underhanded because Keeley also is in love with someone who's not a dwarf.
Yeah.
And has that secret that has been on his heart for, centuries or whatever.
Yeah.
And is in love with, what's the name?
Tauriel,
and wants Tauriel to come to, the halls as well. And so through all of them sort of healing and opening up their worldview and like making all of these positive, growth things, they sort of like are in a place to fight for their own eternal happiness in a way that is like so powerful. And they also leave the door open for future, hint, hint, spoiler,
hint,
dwarves. Dwarves who may also be in love with non-dwarves in the living world, who might need this, opportunity too. So they really sort of like, while they're fighting for the changes in the living world, they are also navigating like a change in the afterlife at the same time, which is super powerful and like could only happen if they got over, like specifically if Thorin could like get through the difficulties of his own guilt and trauma to like come out on the other side. And yeah. And Bilbo's
Can we
so
talk
funny.
about one of my favorite moments?
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of my favorite moments around this scene is like, I'm obsessed with the fact that Bilbo nagged his way into a trial with Manwë.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Because like the
100%.
death was like, I don't remember who the
Mandos.
Mandos, and he's like, yeah, he won't leave. He's like, he won't come
He
with
just
me.
won't go.
And Bilbo's like, I already said I'm not going.
Let me
then
speak
he's
to
like,
the
But you
manager."
must. It is your gift. And Bilbo's like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Let me speak to a manager.
He literally is like, I've already
and
said what
then-
I'm gonna do, which is sit my ass right here.
I was literally sobbing, crying, throwing up when they finally got to touch each other.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
48 fucking chapters of waiting for them to be able to like hold, like the fact that they're like hovering their hands over each other because they can't
Oh yeah.
touch when they're like facing off Sauron and stuff. And like they finally get to hug each other, and Thorin's like, even if I don't get anything else, I got this. I finally got to like hold you in my arms after like
Yep.
80 years of being sad
Pining for the
and
fjords.
alone. It hurt. I thought of you, Alan, because I remembered when you had Caitlin on the show and she brought the 100K fic, and you're like, man, I hate when there's like a slow burn and it takes them so long to get together. And I was thinking to myself, oh boy, because one of the main couples doesn't get together until like
The end.
chapter 30 something or other, and then the other one doesn't get together until 2 chapters before the end.
Yeah, let me tell you, there's a note somewhere in here where I was like, here, let me read it to you. These notes are all like things I wrote in the moment, and I was like,
Yeah.
so they're really my unfiltered thoughts. I wrote, first of all, I said chapter 33, which was when Thorin meddled in the Death Caves, took me 3 times as long to get through because I kept going back to read my favorite parts. And then I said, chapter 33 really delivered on the promises of the 4 or 5 chapters before this, ever since the drunk night at Rohan, because she teases us. She's like, oh, they're drunk. They're talking about feelings. Like, Legolas is about to confess. And you're like, yes, here we go. And then there's like 5-ish, maybe 7 chapters in which nothing happens except Gimli is strictly avoiding Legolas, and I'm like, no. And also, here's the thing: I also really wanted to applaud the author because she has like hover text over a lot of the Khazd-dûm.
Yeah.
So that was really awesome. Like I didn't have to like go to the bottom to look at the glossary that she also very helpfully has at the bottom. But there were a few chapters, I think it must have broken or like it wasn't working on my computer. So I was like, that's fine. So I had the chapter on one tab, and then on the other tab I had the glossary, like same chapter but just at the bottom. And so when I would scroll to the bottom post chapter 33, I could see the like Khazd-dûm glossary was really big, and then there was no Sindarin. And I was like, what do you mean there's no Sindarin? Where the fuck is where is Legolas? Why is he not speaking? Why is he not confessing his love now? So I definitely had my moments of screaming into the void, but also one of the additional tags that she had was like slow build, like glacial. I was like, yeah, that checks out. That checks out.
It is the slowest
Can
of
we also
burns.
talk about
The slowest of slow burns,
Truly.
for sure.
going back to Bilbo at the end? Can we talk about? I thought the way that Bilbo got a dwarven name,
Yes!
or like a dark name,
Dark
was
names.
hysterical.
It's so
Fucking
great.
hysterical, because he's like, Bilbo's essentially like talking to Mahal. And so for some context for anyone who's not a Lord of the Rings fan, the canon says that dwarves have dark names, which are like names that were written into their very like bones by their creator Mahal, and it's like their essence essentially, and it's only shared underground in the dark with other people who are close to you, like your intended or your family. So it's a very deep personal thing. And so by this point in the story, they're at the halls of Mahal, Bilbo and Thorin has already given Bilbo his dark name, and Bilbo's reminiscing with Mahal and is like, man, it's a bummer. Like Thorin has already shown how much he loves me because I know his dark name and I just don't have anything. And Mahal's like, you would allow me to name you? And Bilbo's response is like, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it's
like,
great.
So like talking to a deity, like the deity's like, I can give you a name that is your very essence. And Bill was like, sounds good, bud. Let's do it.
I love
Yeah,
the
let's do that.
dark names in the story. Dodiazirikab, Anvil of Hope for Thorin, and
Mhm, that's a great
Kudalaskadul. it's just like Lover in the Shadows, I think it is. It's just so good. And Gimli's, of course, both his use name and his dark name relate to what is in the halls itself. Gimli's dark name is Sansukh, and there's the chamber of Sansukh and Gimlin Zaram, which means clear sight. And it's so wonderful. So I actually made some dark names for you guys.
You're cheating. Oh
Yeah.
No way.
So
I'm gonna lose my
I
shit.
haven't read these out loud in like a hot second. So
I am okay.
but-
I'm not
Losing
okay
my
right
mind.
now. I can't believe you would just be like, "Oh yeah, I've made some dark names for you."
Yeah. Well, like forever ago, a friend of mine, my friend Brooke, actually like made one for me because we used to like all of us Sansukh buddies and stuff would like make our own dwarfsonas and stuff.
Mhm.
Oh.
And so I have my own, so I'm gonna see if I can find that one too, so I can just tell people what it is. I don't remember.
Great.
Oh, there it is.
Because we're not prepared.
But I'll tell you guys yours first, obviously. So here, Alan, your name is Ukhudni Buzra, which means light in the deep.
Oh.
And then Aaron, yours is Abhar Usu, which means fire of wisdom.
Oh,
spent
my
a while.
God.
I spent a while going on Dwaro Scholar and like putting stuff together and thinking about it. Caitlin has known about this for a while.
Caitlin!
Damn you, Caitlin.
Always the accomplice, Caitlin.
But yeah, and this here,
Truly.
I have my little.
Caitlin's a great
here,
partner
so
in
you see how
crime,
it's
to be fair.
spelled. I'll send you a picture of how it's written out.
Yes,
Oh my
please
God.
do.
But yeah, and mine is Fuluz Maral, which was given to me by my friend Brooke, and it means like swift or some prosperous passion is what it means. I just found.
So
I
good.
found the post.
That
But
is-
yeah, it's just so fun to like.
that's
you know,
so
have-
sweet.
Yeah, so I was
Yeah.
like waiting for us to get to that. I've had it out like sitting here.
I have a lot of
You
feelings.
genius.
Wow.
Oh man,
Incredible.
that is. Yeah, wow, that really hit. Ooh,
Aw.
I've cried enough.
That's fine.
But
fine.
thank you. That is so
Okay.
kind.
You're welcome. Yeah, that was my little secret that I didn't tell anyone that I
Except
had
Caitlin.
until just now. Except Caitlin. Caitlin was the only one who knew. But yes.
I'm starting to think we have to plan something to surprise Caitlin because she's been she's been an accomplice one too many times.
One too many
is-
times.
Incredibly difficult to surprise Caitlin, unfortunately.
That is true.
Too knowledgeable. She's the Nori of our friend group. She's a sneaky lady.
Mm. Yes.
Wow. God.
I feel like we've neglected the Erebor crew, which I love to death. All those beautiful, beautiful dwarves and elves. Gotta say, Legolas being a younger brother in this fic is fucking inspired.
Yeah.
Gotta
Yeah.
say. The
It's
fact
brilliant.
that he's got his bitch older brothers is so great.
Bitch ass older brothers.
Lindawar and Lyrofin. Lyrofin and his friendship with Gamij is like the most important thing to me in the
Yeah.
world.
So cute.
So good.
Gamij is my little baby boy, and when the fic updated after like 4 years, and then there was a time skip, I literally was like texting Det, and I was like, "What do you mean he's an adult? He's been a baby forever.
What do you mean
Why is he
he's
grown
found his
up?
one?
Shut up! What is this?"
Yeah.
It literally like had me. I was like crying over it because I was like, "No,
Aw.
time has passed."
I guess now is my moment to talk about the other quote that I remember.
Yeah.
Let's break up that really heartfelt and wonderful bit of thing with my dumbass brain, which there was a moment where I think it was Wee Thorin
Yes.
and Gamij were talking. Maybe it was Wee Thorin and somebody else, but Wee Thorin gets a like I forget what it's called, but basically like a nickname, like first.
appellation.
Mhm.
Yeah, an appellation,
Yeah.
which is Wee Thorin Sword Axe.
Yeah.
And I believe it's Gamij who responds, more like Wee Thorin Dumbaxe.
Yeah.
And I screamed. It was so funny.
They're so
I love,
great.
yeah, the like relationship. It's so familial and so funny, and like it's such a breath of fresh air compared to like the misery of the previous
Oh,
generations.
yeah. And
Um,
they're so lighthearted and like their first kind
Yeah.
of appearance together when they're like contemplating dropping a pebble on Dane's head.
yeah.
And then you think, and Keely's watching, and he's like, "Oh fuck, I'm gonna be making like apology presents for the rest of my life. Is this how I act?" And then you think Wee Thorin's gonna be like the one who's talking sense to Gamij, and he's like, A pebble won't hit him from there. Use this wood block instead.
Yeah.
You're like, a pebble might cause more harm than you want, and also it's easier to miss. So
Yeah. But it's just
Yeah, they're
all
so
the like
funny.
dwarven characters in Erebor, like Gimri and Bofer, just being so in love. And
Yeah.
Varys Crystalstung is like my favorite girly of all time.
Mhm.
I love her. That disaster lesbian. I love her so much.
We stand a disaster lesbian.
Yeah, and Thera
honestly.
and Dane's like love and Thorin Stonehelm. The best is when it's all three Thorins scowling at each other.
Yeah.
And all the political like intrigue stuff that happens in like Erebor is so stressful.
Mhm.
Like when Dory gets stabbed in the back by Iorna, it's like
Yeah.
screaming, shouting. It's
I
so
wrote on my notes, I think I hate Anorna more, almost as much as Umbridge. Maybe even a little more, to be honest.
Maybe more.
That was
Yeah.
the level of rage I had at that character.
yeah, she is just
That was, I mean, that sort of towards the end when they were navigating the like siege and running out of food and dealing with all that, like that had such like salient points about like dealing with what it means to actually like hold your ground and like try to navigate that kind of situation. And like having them, her and the sort of like dumbass, I don't know if it was like her husband or just like someone, whatever.
Another
Yeah.
nobleman.
Them
yeah,
being
Crema.
like, you're withholding food from us and you're hiding all of the food stores. And if we can't have it, then no one can. And like lighting the food stores on fire was like such a intriguing and important
stealing
like,
the jewels from
jewelry
their
off the
dead.
corpses. Yeah, was like
I
such.
I was screaming.
Yeah.
Screaming.
and she like cuts like a bit of Thera's beard off, and you're like, no.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. I cannot believe that this author created something to the level of Dolores Umbridge. I was livid. I was pissed.
Yeah. So livid. But it was so well handled. It was such a small, like in the arc of things, it was such a small plot point, but it made such an impact.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then she's killed. So she's trying to take Queen Thera hostage to get out of there with the stolen jewelry, not realizing that Marilyn, an elf that is at Erebor, is behind her and shoots her with an arrow, and so she just kind of falls over dead. And the quote is, "It seemed too quiet an end after such malice." And I wrote, I'll fucking say, like, we didn't get no trial, we didn't get no justice, just a swift arrow through the. Ugh,
Yep.
Fine, I understand that the situation necessitated it, but I was not pleased. I wanted to see her in pain.
Yeah, it's just and then like the stress of Beaufort digging through the tunnels to go to Dale to get the help from them and to get help from King Brand and his son Bard, and then the mine collapsing on the way back, and then you have Gamish going in to go and he's all by himself and he kills an orc, but you're
An
like,
orc with a lamp.
"Ah!" And then
Poor
then
baby.
Beaufort gets blinded, and it's so and then you have
Yeah.
Bomber going out there to go try and find his brother. When I was rereading it, like, a couple months ago, I had forgotten that Bomber dies right before Dane. And I was
Mhm.
like sobbing so hard when Bomfrist is like, we need to bring his body in, and they had to leave him
Oh.
outside. And it's like, and then it's immediately to Dane going to go fight and save Brand, and then Brand dies, and then it's just him and Selga, and he's trying to convince Selga to leave the battlefield, and then it's Thorin and Freyrin bearing witness to Dane's last stand, and how the orcs are so in awe of his strength against Dagalur that they're taking him on one at a time, because they knew if they rushed him all at once, they could overtake him, but they're just so impressed by how well he's like keeping up. And you're just like watching it, like
And
you're
he's also
reading it, and you're
poisoned
just
at
like,
that point.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just I'm always like crying during that part. Literally that whole like half chunk of the chapter there, I can never see. And then I get KO'd by my own art like 3 times in a row.
You're like, God damn it.
Which is the worst part.
Hysterical, but yes, devastating.
Yeah.
Yes. And
my
I
God.
love Marilyn and Lindewar and Lyrafin so much. And Jerry. And then you have
Jerry.
I love Jerry. Sansukh was actually my first ever introduction to like a non-binary character in fiction. And so having like Jerry the dwarf just be this wonderful little dwarf with their 2 lesbian moms is like the best thing ever. And then they go and they meet Princess Kara, and they have that wonderful scene where Gimli talks to Kara and such, just entirely in Kuzul. I think is so impressive because, it's difficult to translate stuff, especially if it's like, made up language.
Right.
Right.
It's a feat. It's like 8 or 9 lines, and it's so cool.
Yeah, it's just the whole fic is rife with incredible characterization. Like, it is a long fic. It is an undertaking to do. However, I would say that it's warranted. Like, all of it is in service of the story it's telling. And not only that, but like the layers it adds to a story that you may already know. One of the things that I wrote was, where is this? Oh yeah, that like when the fic used lines from the movies or books, but added a layer to the fic. And so like one of these things is like Gandalf is able to see the dead dwarfs being, this angelic being. And so when they are talking, I think Gandalf is talking to Frodo about how Bilbo pitied Gollum and didn't kill him. And Frodo's like, I wish he had. Gandalf says, many that live deserve death and some that die deserve life. Talking to Frodo, he's talking about Gollum, but he's looking at Thorin when he says it. And it's just like those little moments that are so smart.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's so well put together, and you can tell the care that was taken in making sure that it was like accurate and consistent. And yeah, you really fall in love with all of the characters. And let me tell you, there's a few of them.
There's a few of them. There's quite a few.
There are at least 5.
I know. I sent like when we finally like confirmed all this, I sent Aaron like a huge block of text, and it's like, here's all the reading stuff that you should probably look at just in case if you want to keep track of everyone, and just in case if you get lost. Like, I want to make sure.
And I was like, no,
You're
friend,
so kind.
no.
Yeah.
This is real nice of you, but I'm garbage, and I'm not gonna read that.
But
I saw that you were working on a graphic novel of this. Is that finished?
So actually, there's 2.
Oh.
So here's the lore. Here's
Yes.
the lore. Back in 2015, I started making a Sansukh graphic novel called The Mighty Sansukh Graphic Novel Project.
Love it.
And it was all by myself. I was doing it. I did, I think, 48 pages of that. And then,
Wow.
but I was going like line for line. Like, no adaptation, no cuts whatsoever.
Kudos.
It was not feasible, so I stopped.
Yeah.
But then last year, I had made the covers because I always told my friend I want to make copies of the book to have. So I had made these covers, and like I got an anon, and someone was like, "Oh, I thought this was like a graphic novel because of like the way the art was." And I was like, "Funny you should mention that. I actually used to do this thing." And I was like, put a little like gif of Elrond going, "I was there, Gandalf, 1,000 years ago." And I sent that to Detz, and I was like, "Haha, isn't this so funny?" And she was like, if you like still want to do that, I would adapt it for you. And I was like, "Are you serious?"
That's amazing.
And so we are now actually doing a webcomic of it.
Yes.
I have been on like hiatus in terms of working on pages, but I have like a backlog.
Sure.
But the first chapter, is currently posting. It is the first 2 Mondays of the month. Thorin just got his little power, actually.
Ooh, fun.
So if you want to like go and read that, the blog is called Sansukh Comic. It's all one word. And it's also posted on my Instagram, Fishy Dwarves, and my Twitter, which is wow__then, in like a thread.
Nice.
So there are 3 places to go and see it.
I love it.
But the main one is the Tumblr itself. And there's also like a little I made like a little trailer video for like
Cute.
to get like people excited when I was working on it and stuff. And it's really cool. It's going to be a really long undertaking, and it's definitely like a passion project.
Yeah.
So I'm trying not to like hold myself to stuff too much, but it's super cool. I'm very passionate about it, and it's really cool seeing people like talk in the tags about how they're like,
Yes.
"Oh my god, I remember this scene" or whatever, and it's so cool. And it sucks too because I'll like reread it, like the fic, and I'll be like, I want to draw. I see it in my head how I'd do
Yeah.
this, but it's gonna be years until I get to this.
Yeah.
I
feel like it's gonna take a while.
But yeah, so I did have one, and now I have a new one.
Amazing.
Amazing. I'm excited to read it.
Thank you.
Because I'm looking forward to the next time in which I have the availability to go through this again, because it was a wonderful time.
And there is a sequel. Not like a
Yeah,
sequel,
there's like
there's
an
a
epilogue.
appendices
Yeah,
thing.
like an epilogue.
Yeah, there's an epilogue, which I inspired.
I know.
It's dedicated to me.
Congratulations.
And I also am technically the reason that it's titled the way it is. Because
Amazing.
Des and I were talking about it, and she's like, okay, I want to write this thing where like Legolas goes to the halls of Mahal and stuff. And I was like, hey, would Legolas have like a dark name? Like, you know, because he always talks about how he's so sad that he doesn't. And she was like, so
Genius.
that's my like claim to fame.
I did read the epilogue as well because I was like,
You did. I
of
love
course I did.
Tasalakud is.
I had to
yes.
save it.
It's
I
so
had to
good.
not do it.
Yeah.
I had to be like, I have to go to
Yeah,
bed.
well, you can do it afterwards.
Yeah, but I think it's helpful to point out like the end of the story. I love that the story ends with the end of Gimli's life.
It hurts so bad,
Oh
but
my
in such a
God.
good
But it's
way.
so good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It has the perfect ending sentence, which is he's like, oh, so the scenario is that Mahal comes to Thorin and is like,
I'm literally
hey,
gonna start crying.
I need a favor from you. And Thorin's like, what do you need? No, what is it? Tell me first. And Mahal's like, well, I thought you would want to like do this because of the love we both bear for him. And Thorin's like, all right, I'm in. And so Mahal sends Thorin to like ease Gimli like over to the halls of Mahal. And oh my God, I didn't write the whole thing down, but they have a beautiful exchange where Gimli's like, okay, I have to go. Oh,
Everyone's
has
got
I'm
it.
gonna
Everyone's
go
got it.
open it right. Well, actually, I have the fucking book. Hold on. What am I
Yeah.
doing scrolling on my phone?
Well, it's like,
we
you
have
I got it.
Celebrimbor and Toriel now in the halls, and they've left behind
Yeah.
like a path essentially that
Legolas can follow. Yeah.
Legolas can follow. So he's trying to ease Gimli, like, hey, it's okay, let's move on. All right, hit it, Evelyn.
Okay, I will read it. My star, Thorin, son of my heart, it's time. But, there's no putting it off anymore, is there? All right, you'll have to guide me, as you have ever done. I'll be able to give you a hug at long last. Don't dawdle now. But, Legolas, he'll be right behind you. He knows the path. As swift as he is, it will not take long. We're all so proud of you, Sansukh. So proud. Ha! It wasn't a bad life, was it? No, not at all. We're all waiting, Gimli. Everyone, Ahmad, Adad, Dane, and Dwalin, and Lonnie, and Ori, all here and more besides. There's so many who want to see you. Don't be late now. All right, keep your beard on, my king. I think I see a light on the horizon. I'm so sad.
it's so
That
good.
line, that ending is
Ugh.
perfect. So perfect.
It is.
Oh,
Oh.
truly devastating. I was pleased as punch to see the epilogue. So I was like, that was beautiful and perfect, but also I need more.
Yeah,
So
I need
went
to
read
know.
Well,
the
there's so
book.
many appendices stories
Yeah.
that were written by other people.
Yeah,
and-
I'm reading currently the Gimmish and Perry, how they make, because I was like,
yeah,
info
a new
on
coat.
this.
Perry is great. He snuck up on her. He was not a planned character.
I love him. He's adorable.
I love
Yeah. But my like the best gift I ever got was when she was posting these final chapters. We were like talking again after, she was gone for just 4 years, and I would just send messages to her, not expecting any reply.
Yeah.
And she came back, and I was so happy to like see her. And so, as like a gift, she sent me the document of the last chapter the day before she posted it.
Wow.
So for like a short time, it was only me who had read the last chapter of the story.
Oh, my
And-
God.
And then it was me and my friend Brooke as well,
Mhm.
and we were the only two people aside from Dets who had read it. And I remember I like read, the whip that she sent me, and I was literally like crying, like couldn't see. I was just like, it was full body sobs because it was just like this thing that I'd like have loved forever ending.
Yeah.
It's just so I love the story so much.
What a beautiful gift.
Yeah. And what a poignant sort of like thing to think about in terms of endings. And like, it was the end of a chapter of your life. And this story is all about accepting death and accepting change and knowing that things live on, even if in different forms. And like, you can still, those things stay with you.
Yeah. It's just it's such a one and the
Wow.
tone of the ending is very much kind of how Tolkien tried to end his stories with eucastrophe, which is that feeling of like great joy and great sorrow, which is the same kind of feeling you get when you read Sam saying, "Well, I'm home."
Yeah. We didn't even really talk about that. But we don't really need to.
Other...
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been talked about a lot. I mean, obviously, but like, and they play a major role in this. But like, we're too far deep in this. We can't go back.
The Sam Pro polycule is real. Rosie is their wife, and it's great.
Yes, and that's all
that matters.
Yeah, and you should go and read it just, for that experience too. Well, and there is this sort of interesting idea that like none of them are fully healed from what they go through, Frodo included, and that's a conversation that's had a lot with Frodo where he never like settles back into the Shire. And like, none of them are the same as when they started. And there's a whole conversation about sort of at the end when, all of the sort of old guard are completely like those generations are all gone. And they're kind of sitting around being like, we don't get to live through the thing that we set up for this, new generation, and they're going to make it their own. And what a gift, but what also, thinking about that as an ending, and that is something to mourn and grieve and sort of like recognize as difficult, is that they like, it's the, planting seeds in a tree you'll never get to see kind of thing. But yeah, it was, a lot of feelings. So do we rate this?
I was about to be like, it feels like an appropriate time. This would be where we ask for ratings. So Evelyn, you want to go first?
Well, I think you know my answer.
Yeah. Maybe we should save Evelyn's for last.
Well, I'll be quiet then.
Maybe Evelyn should go last. Alan, what do you rate it?
Why do I go first?
Because it's funny.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I would give it a 9.5 out of 5.
Wow.
Because let me tell you something. First of all, when I came into this, like when I started doing my work, when I sat down to watch The Lord of the Rings, I was like, I'm not a fantasy girly. I'm not a Lord of the Rings stan boy. This is like going to go poorly for me. And then I liked them. And I was like, okay, well, that's ruined my life. We don't have time to think about it right now. I have to go into this fic. And then I read this fic, and there were times when I was reading that I was like, this is the best fan fiction I've ever read. Like, there were moments that were just so poignant and like touching, and the way it's written, the prose, the like poetry in it, the way that it folds itself into the canon that is already so vast, so vast. That is so impressive to me, to have been able to like parse through all of that and then just kind of jigsaw your way into it. It's not really even like it's like they walk side and side. Like I can't think of The Lord of the Rings without in some way thinking about Sansukh and how that relates to it. And for all of the reasons that I've already talked about, like the art that was incorporated, the care that was taken with the language and the culture, the music, the way that it just folded all of that in was perfect to me. I was a 10, and then I got to near the end, and my only kind of like, I'm not sure, was I think when we went to the Oricon, Carney, all of that, the political intrigue plot of the Cult of Sauron, by that point I was like, I feel like we're near the end. I would like to end. Like, I was like, well, I don't know. Like, is it feeling maybe a little bloated? And then I think the hiatus happened when it was introduced as a plot, and then when she resolved it, because it was resolved in a letter from Kara, and she like said, oh, we've defeated the cult, and this is what's happening, and this is who I want in my court. And I was like, that's a great way to wrap it up. But I also then feel like maybe some of the setup that we had was not needed. But again, that's a 9.5 out of 5. Like, it is like the best fan fiction I've ever read. It's near perfection. I love it. And I cannot wait to reread it. So that's how I feel. Aaron?
Same.
Ditto.
I mean, I was just going to give it a 5 because obviously like that's our rating scale, but like 9.5 totally. I agree with the end. I think towards the end, I kind of reached a point of like, similarly to Alan, I was like, okay, like we can kind of wrap this up. Like the last maybe like 6 or 7 chapters, I felt like I really just like flew through compared to the previous. And there was like some of that stuff. I mean, it was still interesting. It wasn't bad. It was just one of those things where I was like, okay, the main characters that I like really deeply care about, the ones like the storylines that I have been invested in are like reaching their natural conclusion. And the political intrigue stuff is interesting. It's world building. And I could see how this could turn. I kind of wish it was like its own entity, or like maybe like a different style of epilogue. I see your face, Evelyn. Other people don't see it because it's an audio thing, but it felt like something that could be its own thing as opposed to being tacked on at the end. But it was really, really fascinating. And I loved the ending. I loved the way it wrapped up. I love those gay little dwarves. Love wins. Love wins, man.
Yeah.
And I was just, Yeah, 9.5 is great. I'll give it to you.
Yeah. Well, I obviously have to go a 10 out of 5.
Yeah, of course.
Because this fic is so important to me, and it's made me have some lifelong friendships, and I've literally been drawing art of it for a decade, and I'm never gonna stop.
Yeah, as you shouldn't.
Yeah.
And it is just this wonderful thing that I've carried in my heart for so many years. And usually what happens is I go through a period of like every year I get really re-obsessed with it, and I tell everyone I know about it.
Great. I cannot tell you, I've been like bursting to get into like in front of this microphone with
I know. I've been waiting so long.
I have not spoken to anyone because I try to tell my friends a little bit about that. Like, again, I texted my best friend when it changed from melanine to melathnine. I was like, this is too big to contain, but I cannot, I just want to talk about it. And I'm like, there's so many parts that were so good. Like, we didn't even scratch the surface really of all that there is of this fic. It's just, it's a long journey, but it's a well worth one.
Yeah.
So I loved it.
Well, I'm glad I could share it with you guys.
Yeah, if you come back on again, though, you're going to have a cap on word count.
Yeah, we got to set more rules next time. This was
Sorry,
on us.
but
Our
it was
bad.
worth it.
It was worth it.
Sorry.
It was
half
worth
a million words,
Yeah.
Wow.
Literally half a million.
I can't even like wrap my mind around the fact that a human wrote that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And also, I want to mention like she went on hiatus and came back, and I didn't like there wasn't a noticeable shift in her style either.
True.
Like it kept consistent. Like I was like, that's great.
Yeah, which is nuts. Well, on that note, Evelyn, do you want to plug anything? Tell the people what you're doing, because you have some cool recent news that you could maybe share if you want.
Sure.
But just like, where can we find you? What are you up to? All that stuff.
Well, I am now officially affiliated with the Bright Agency in their children's illustration department.
Yeah.
I have an agent now.
Congratulations.
Which is super cool.
They're too good for us. We snuck in under the
Shush you.
right before the door closed. On like we might have had to talk to your people.
Right, exactly.
But if you want to find me and my work, my personal portfolio is evelynrogers.com. I also have a Twitter, which is @wow__then, Instagram @FishyDwaros, which is, of course, a reference to the desolation of Smog when my sweet company boys get shoved into some barrels and then they get poured fish on them. It is my favorite obscure reference.
That I finally
and also
get.
on Tumblr. Yeah, and also on Tumblr under the username Fish Fingers and Scarves, or you could read the Sansukh comic, which is Sansukh comic. Read along. The first chapter, I think it will end within this year, and then probably there'll be a short break before the next chapter comes out. My goal is to kind of have 2 chapters on backlog before I release the next one, so that I don't die.
Genius. Yeah. Smart.
But I'm really proud of some of the layouts that are coming in some of the upcoming pages that probably won't be seen for a bit, but I will send to you guys.
Yes, thank you.
But yeah, so follow along and also, of course, read the fic because it is so wonderful and just my favorite thing in the world.
Amazing. And you can find us on all the places and things, Spotify, Apple, blah, blah, blah. We do this every time. It's theficlist.com is a great landing page. We're on TikTok. We're on all the stuff. Tumblr, Caitlin runs the Tumblr. Yay, Caitlin.
Woo, Caitlin.
I said that kind of sarcastically. I love Caitlin. That was genuine.
This is Aaron trying to speed through this.
Yeah, trying to speed through it. This is our end of season 4 episode. This is it.
Oh my God, I forgot.
Woo!
So we're going to go on our hiatus for a little while because we need to recover.
That's true.
It has been an absolute blast. We sort of muscled through it at the end. We saved this one as our let's go.
Big hoorah.
Rock it out. We are hoping to see y'all at some Comic-Cons this spring, and that will usually, but before we start up again, we usually start recording and posting right in time for Pride. So if you are going to Philly Comic-Con, you should let me know because I'm going and Alan is going and our friend Mai is going.
Hi, Mai.
And hi Mai. And Caitlin's probably going to come to you, so we're going to go and we're meeting Joseph Quinn, babe. So we'll keep you posted on all of our Comic-Con appearances, be they official or unofficial, on social media. And that's kind of it for season 4 of the Fic List.
Oh man, I
Wow.
can't believe that the next time you hear us will be season 5. How have we been doing this for 5 seasons? No one knows.
No one knows. Least of all us. But it has been a blast. Oh, I
Truly.
need to, before we go, we have some Ko-Fi shout outs. So,
Oh, yay!
yeah, let me pull those up because we have a couple of folks who donated. In case you're unaware, we are on Ko-Fi, ko-fi/the fic list. And if you feel so led, you could donate literally any denomination. The least it will only let me go down to $1 in terms of like minimum amount, but we appreciate any dollar that you send our way because it helps offset the cost of this podcast. So we have to shout out again, who donated, and Kenzie King, who sent 2 coffees for the best book club hosts around, which was so nice.
Thank you all so much. That's very
thank you to
sweet.
everybody. It was so sweet, and you never have to, but it does help us out a lot, and we do sincerely appreciate it when you do. So that's it, y'all.
Woo-hoo.
Into the light we go, I guess.
I was going to say, I see a light
yeah,
on the
I think I
horizon.
see a light on the horizon.
Incredible.
God, we're nerds.
All
I
right.
love it.
Yeah, really. All right. Well, goodbye, team.
Bye.
Bye.